The Lumix S9 was probably one of the most hated cameras when it was released, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys why everybody was wrong. And I personally think this is the best camera release of 2024, and I'm going to give myself a challenge. I'm going to edit this entire video on nothing but my iPhone. Before we can understand the camera, we need to set the scene. So let's go through all the specs of the Lumix S9 to see what we're working with. The S9 is a 24 megapixel full frame mirrorless camera that shoots 6K open gate, 4K up to 60 frames per second, and 1080p up to 180 frames per second. And it also has a new codec called MP4 Lite, which is a 3.8K open gate. So this is the full image here that you can see. This is open gate. And it uses the entire width and height of the sensor, which allows you to have so much more options when it comes to reframing for socials or just cropping in general. And the codec uses a lower bitrate, which means it's easily transferable to your phone. More on that later. The sensor inside is the exact same one from the S5 Mark II. Still using the awesome Face Detect autofocus, still has the same dual native ISO, and of course we still have the best-in-class IBIS from Lumix, which turns your hands into gimbals. The body itself is super tiny, weighing less than 500 grams, and that's with a battery and SD card inside. It's basically a much smaller S5 Mark II, and with a specs list like that, it's pretty easy to call this thing a powerhouse. But specs are just specs. A camera is best tested by putting it to use, and we'll get to that soon. One of the new features that sets this camera apart is the new LUT system and the MP4 Lite codec that I mentioned earlier. This means that editing on my phone for social media videos for Instagram and TikTok and whatever is really easy to do, but also, like I said, this entire video is being edited on my phone and it's very straightforward to do. It's akin to the Insta360 X4, where they had the Insta360 Studio app, and it was the same sort of process. You'd connect the cameras, tell it which clips you want, you edit, you export, and you post. And I never had to do anything with a laptop in between. Color grading. You either love it or you hate it. But the S9 has a really cool trick up its sleeve to make it something you don't have to worry about anymore. This big LUT button. Hit that and you can choose from up to 40 LUTs to burn into your footage so that you can completely skip the color grading process. Now yes, technically the S5 Mark II can burn LUTs into its footage as well, but it's much more clunky and it takes longer to set up. But it's clear that Lumix have streamlined the LUT application process and that this is probably how they're going to implement this going forward with future cameras. But back to the LUTs. From here you can choose from any of the LUTs that you've installed on your camera. Oh, but what's this? We don't have any LUTs installed on our camera? Let's change that. Now there are 3 ways we can get LUTs onto our S9. Way number 1 is to export a LUT from Resolve, put it onto an SD card, put that SD card into the camera, and then load it into your LUTs library. Way number 2 is to use the new Lumix Lab app. We can simply browse from other creatives' LUTs, download some that we like, and then send them straight to our camera. And then lastly, again using the Lumix Lab app, we can actually take some clips that we have imported from our camera, grade it in Lumix Lab itself, and then send that LUT back to your camera. And then you load it on there, and yeah, super easy. Now as you shoot with these LUTs, they are burned into your footage, which of course saves time in the edit. There will for sure be times where I'll want the flexibility of a log picture profile, but there's definitely going to be a lot of times where I'll make use of this, such as with social media content or just video projects that require a fast turnaround. For instance, these talking heads, I use the same LUT and the same lighting setup every single time. So right now, for instance, is a perfect example to burn the look into the footage. The S5 size obviously makes it a great vlogging camera and travel camera as well, saving on that backpack space. But just because it's so small doesn't mean this thing isn't a powerhouse.
Yeah, set for life, yeah, ain't nothing that's gonna take over. Shit, know when they gonna take it, but I grab it, I'ma have it. I've been cutting my habits, so I gotta do it, man, I thought I don't math this. Cause I be really putting, man, I want my status. Damn, they gonna see that I do this, they gonna see that I did this though. Now they say, oh shit, I can't do the same when you kidding, bro. Cause I spend my time just working, but I spend my time just grinding. And I spend my time in the studio with these lyrics, just combining. Just fortune all these diamonds, cause I made it from far. And nobody believed it, but I showed them what I was, it's sure.
Now at the start of this video, I bet a lot of you guys said, why on earth would I edit this entire video on my iPhone? I would have so much more fine control with a laptop or desktop. I can color grade and I can do it really precisely. I have all the effects and plugins and power of DaVinci Resolve. And you know what? You're right. I would. But recently I encountered the very moment that inspired this whole video and made me want to edit on nothing but my iPhone. Yaz and I recently got married, and there's a video coming for that soon. And after we got married, we went straight to Thailand, and after a few days of being a blob and relaxing and just eating and chilling by the pool, I had the itch to create. Now, for Thailand, I had brought my Insta360 X4 with me, and I was making a whole video about that. Insta360 has a companion app for all their cameras, Insta360 Studio. And in that app, you can reframe all of your shots, obviously, but then it goes even deeper. You have basically an Insta360 version of CapCut. It was such a relief to edit on just my phone. It was relaxing, which is weird to say because editing is not typically a relaxing thing to do. Comparing that, of course, to editing on a laptop where I'd have to connect the X4 to the laptop by cable. I didn't have to create a folder structure because your boy likes to stay organized, then import all the files into the folder structure I've made. Then I'd have to take all those files, put them into Insta360 Studio, reframe everything. And then because I'm on my laptop, I may as well use DaVinci Resolve because that's what I use to edit all my videos. So I export all of those reframed clips, bring them into DaVinci Resolve, have some sort of organized folder structure within DaVinci Resolve as well, find music, find my effects and plugins and stuff, and then create the video, and then export, send back to my phone to then upload to IG and TikTok. And I just feel like there's like maybe one too many steps in there. Now with the Lumix S9, all you have to do is open the Lumix Lab app, select the clips you want, download them, and now they're on your phone. And thanks to the really useful LUT feature with the S9, when you're editing it, you don't have to do any color grading. So you just create your sequence and you're done. Post it. So easy. I'm obviously aware that there has been a huge amount of hate towards this camera over the past few months since it's been out. And if I'm completely honest with you guys, I don't see why. This camera is essentially a smaller S5 Mark II. Now yes, there are some drawbacks, and here are those drawbacks. The body is not very grippy, especially when you hold it from the side with one hand. So one of the things you can do is get a cage that has been released by SmallRig. This actually came out at the same time as the S9, and this will help to give a little bit more grip on the camera body itself. But also you could just use a camera strap like what I do. I use a Peak Design one, I've used it for years, and it's a solid way to protect your camera. Although of course you could just hold it like this with two hands, and then I feel like you alleviate a lot of the one-handed grippiness or lack of grippiness problems. The next drawback is there's no mechanical shutter. This creates a couple of issues here. Something that I've only seen on other creators' videos is when you're taking photos, it means you can have this sort of banding effect, especially in low light, and it can honestly just ruin the photo. Maybe if you're only shooting daylight stuff, or frankly, if you're looking to just do photography mainly with this camera, perhaps it's not the right choice for you. Perhaps there's another camera out there for you, which there definitely is. There's a lot out there nowadays. Two, this creates a second kind of issue, which is that electronic shutters often have worse rolling shutter. You know that effect where every straight line ends up looking crooked? Well, that's worse with an electronic shutter, so something else to bear in mind. Another drawback is there's no hot shoe, it's actually a cold shoe. You know, I never knew the difference between a hot and a cold shoe. I thought they were physically different. Well, they are, but like in terms of like how they fit. But a hot shoe is the electronic parts. That's what makes a shoe hot. Not the shoes you wear on your feet. There's also only one SD card, which, it's a con, it's not a con, I don't know. Take it how you will, because personally I've had cameras in the past that only ever had one SD card, like I'm sure many of you have, and I never really saw it to be that big of a deal. Although of course now having a camera that does have two SD cards, I do see why it's something that people complain about when a camera that's come out doesn't have it. But again, the size of this camera, I don't know. Take it as you will. And now the very last thing, and maybe the most important to some people, but honestly it's not even been a problem for me. It's the record limit. This camera has record limits across the various codecs. So I'm mainly using the 3.8K MP4 Lite codec, and that has a 15-minute record limit. I believe 4K, it's 20 minutes, and 6K, it's like 10 minutes. Depending on what you're gonna use, you'll have a varying limit. Honestly, this entire video, I've been shooting a lot of it on the S9 and some on my S5 Mark II. I have barely gone over 4 minutes on a lot of clips, and that's well within the record limit for all the codecs. So yes, it sucks that there is a record limit, I guess, but is it actually that limiting? It depends on what kind of work you're going to be doing. If you're doing social media stuff, then no, I don't think it's a limit at all. If you're doing long form interviews, yeah, don't get this camera. But otherwise, it's a non-issue for me. The so-called drawbacks aren't really that much of a negative for me. In fact, they're barely an issue in a lot of cases. These things don't make or break what you can do with the camera, and that, I feel like, is what so many people just aren't realizing. A lot of people don't see that the camera and the little details it has aren't gonna make or break what you can create. It's the big features that matter, that's true. But little things like, oh, there's only one SD card, there's no hot shoe, whilst these things may be like, oh, I wish they had that, it's not going to ruin the awesome things that you guys can create. It's not affecting what I'm creating, and I'm having a lot of fun with this limited camera. So I just don't really see them as drawbacks, if I'm honest. Defense time over. The S9 is a camera built for content creators. I think it does this really well and has really streamlined the whole process of creating with this new MP4 Lite codec, which has allowed me to edit this entire video on my phone. As you can see, I edited the entirety of this video on my phone using CapCut. And before I round off this video and conclude the S9 and my thoughts, I'm gonna round off how it was to edit. Transferring the footage from the S9 to my phone, piece of cake. It was really great and easy. Lumix did a great job with that. But then editing in CapCut, I feel like for social media stuff, it's great. It makes a lot of sense because it's short form and maybe you're not doing too many complex edits and too many layers of footage and things like that. With a longer form video, the only thing that actually made it a pain in the ass, for one, you're using your fingers to trim clips, so there's some inaccuracies with like where I cut in this video that you guys may have noticed, like an S going on a bit longer or whatever for the ends of certain clips. But the main thing for me was that what are called overlays in CapCut, which are basically just like a second layer or a third layer in like a normal linear editor, they don't shift when you delete something in the timeline on your main layer. So they stay where they are. And that meant every time I made an adjustment, like, oh, I just noticed I made a mistake, or I cleaned something up, or I removed something because I didn't need it, I had to move all the overlays, all the second and third layers of footage forwards or backwards or whatever to make sure they're aligned properly. And that's just, but that's on CapCut. So I don't think I'll be editing an entire YouTube video again on my phone, but for social media videos like Instagram, TikTok stuff, it's easy, it's great, because you won't be doing as many layers, maybe. So why did I do this? Why did I go through the pain of editing an entire YouTube video in CapCut? Well, there's one main reason. It was to show what is possible with the S9. Rather than focusing on what a tool doesn't have, think about the things that it unlocks and the things that you can create with it. I had a lot of fun being able to just instantly have something colored the way I wanted it and then transfer and start editing immediately on my phone, albeit, you know, ignoring what I've said about CapCut. It was really easy and really fun to do. I'll probably use DaVinci Resolve going forward, but knowing I don't have to color every shot, that's pretty cool as well. And for anything Instagram Reels or TikTok related, I know that this is the camera to use. If you guys enjoyed that video, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you're curious about the bigger brother to the S9, the S5 Mark II, check out these two videos here I made, and I'll see you there.